I'd like to call the meeting to order, please. Thank you very much, and welcome to the Edenton Council special meeting and our regularly scheduled committee meeting for this month of June. We'll follow our agenda tonight, and I will just, on that note, advise that we had an interview, as you see under item A, prior to this meeting that I just convened. So we're now at item B in the special meeting agenda, which is a continuation of a public hearing we had back on May the 29th relative to a text amendment in our ordinances to address our inaccurate ordinance as it related to beekeeping in Edenton. And our staff has been working since that meeting, having listened to the public comments, and the staff has incorporated into our draft proposal earlier some of the recommendations that we received from the public. So, with all of that background being said, how do I do this? We had the public hearing is still open, but you have more. Why don't we have the staff present first, and then if people from the public want to make comment relative to your recommendations, we will allow that to happen.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everybody. So in your packet for this evening, you received a revised staff report that looks similar to the one you received earlier in the month, but it includes additional recommendations from the beekeeping community. The changes that staff made are in red, and the suggestions by the beekeeping community are in blue. Just to briefly highlight those, and we'll start at the top with basic definitions. A suggestion to remove and harvest honey from the definition of beekeeper. Many felt that a keeper of bees could just have the bees, but not necessarily be the one to harvest the honey. In addition to that, the definition of hives, they preferred that we not say that they are the wooden frame boxes, but they are the structures used to house bees. And this also kind of addressed Councilman Dixon's question about the variety of different beekeeping structures, some that may be more appropriate in the historic district, and would allow for that. The next change that they suggested was under section 180.11, and it was number 2 here at the bottom, to allow for bees to be kept in the side yard. So you see that we've put their suggestion in there in the blue, striking out or side. The original language would have kept it only in the backyard. This would allow for it in the side or rear yard. The next suggestion was that regarding beekeeper certification, and I think you heard at the last meeting some details about what it takes to become a certified beekeeper, that it's a specific program through the North Carolina State Beekeepers Association that takes a fairly significant amount of time. So the suggestion made was to just make a statement that they should seek training and certification through the North Carolina State Beekeepers Association or similar organization, but that takes out the requirement. It's a should, not a must. The next suggested change was allowing for existing buildings or vegetation to screen as well as a fence. So that could mean if there's something already blocking where the bees are kept from the right-of-way, rather than having to install additional vegetation or fencing, that they'd be allowed to use that intervening building as part of their screening.
Elizabeth.
Yes, sir.
Instead of me waiting till you get to the
Sure.
end, on these that are in blue that they suggested and you put in there, how do you feel about it?
Some of them I think are definitely warranted. I think, let me go back. I have no problems with the ones I've mentioned up to this point. I think, you know, you all need to consider whether you want to allow them in the side yard. That's a pretty big difference than
I'll write that
only
down.
rear yard versus side yard as well. I think that we probably do want to encourage some hobbyist beekeepers, and that having the requirement that they seek certification maybe is too strong for someone that has less than 5 hives, but someone that was going to do more than 5, I think that might be reasonable to set as a condition, but they're going to have to get a special use permit, so that could be part of that process. I'm certainly fine with using existing buildings as screening.
And how will, excuse me, how will we know who has how many hives?
Well, we'll have to get to that.
Okay.
Right now, the way the language was presented, all beekeepers would be required to get a zoning permit, which is that $50 fee and staff review. At the very end, I'll mention what the Beekeeper Association suggested as a change, and that'll have to be something you guys discuss. There was also a suggestion just to simplify the sentence about a suitable water source on site rather than including the to prevent off-site foraging. It's sort of like additional information about what the water source on site prevents. That's pretty innocuous. And then the hives being required to be removed if the owner or beekeeper is no longer maintaining them in good order and condition. I think that's certainly a good suggestion. This is the last one that is probably the biggest difference between what staff presented and what the beekeepers recommended. They felt like the $50 zoning permit fee was a big obstacle for a hobbyist beekeeper who may have 1 or 2 hives. It's an inhibition from them getting started. So there was a suggestion that you could look at not regulating those folks that have 5 or fewer, or excuse me, less than 5 hives at all. That would be a way to eliminate that zoning permit requirement and that $50 requirement. However, that means they're unregulated, and only those that would have 5 or more hives who would get the special use permit would seek regulation. So we would know about those folks and their location. We would have to come up with some other idea for those with 5 or fewer hives. It had been mentioned earlier today that our fellow with Public Works that does some of the bug spraying for the town would like to be aware of where these beehives are located so that he could avoid spraying them and damaging them. So we could consider a registry that folks would voluntarily let Public Works staff know where their hives are located so that they can be made aware of when the spraying is going to occur. But again, that would be a voluntary registration type thing for those that are less than 5 hives if you take away the zoning permit requirement.
These residential areas, how far is these on one property from the people's home on the other property?
They would be required to be 15 feet, I'm looking for the,
It's
my
on
hand. Right, 15 feet from other property lines, a minimum of 15 feet. So they could be more than that, but a minimum of 15 feet from someone else's property line.
Okay.
Elizabeth, that $50 fee, is that a one-time thing, or is that an annual thing? Or
It's one time.
one time?
Mhm.
The biggest question that I would have, and I don't know enough about beekeeping really, but number 4 up there, where it's talking about the training, it says should seek training. Use myself for example. I know absolutely nothing about beekeeping. Don't really want to know a whole lot about it because I'm scared of it. But if I decided tomorrow that I wanted to put in some bees, you know, I need to know something about it. I need to seek some information about it. So I'm leaning towards staying with the training. Maybe not that strenuous, or because someone made a comment last time about how strenuous it would be and how long a period it is and this type of thing, but some type of training, maybe from some of you guys that know more about it. And I'm just throwing this out. Again, all I know about beekeeping is what Ron has told me. So.
And you could certainly do that. I think there was a discussion at the last meeting about a timeline, you know, maybe making it a year to have that certification. Or you could, instead of having that official certified beekeeper designation, you could have another. I just don't know what other certification there would be. I'm just not aware, other than the certified beekeeper, that would mean that they had gone through training.
Right.
Everything else would be kind of a suggestion. You should reach out to the local beekeepers association. You should seek training from and certification through the state of North Carolina, rather than a must.
That's still a concern I have.
Anything else for me?
Council members, any questions of staff at this point? Thank you, Elizabeth.
Elizabeth, yeah, one quick question. So I mean, if you're not going to charge a fee, which I'm not in favor of, I mean, $50 for a one-shot deal, I don't know how that can be a hardship. But I mean, if you want to really get into a hobby, you know, I mean, but I guess my big thing is here, how are you going to know? You're not going to know where they are, because some people just aren't going to volunteer that I've got bees in my yard, I got this, I got that. So how would you know? You wouldn't, correct?
We wouldn't unless they voluntarily registered, or if we had a problem come up.
Right.
I can see the problem a neighbor could,
Yeah, yeah.
call your office and say, yeah, I got a problem with these.
Well, that also gives us the right to know about it, and then we can say, you know, maybe it isn't a problem, you know?
Right,
Yeah.
right.
I agree with you.
Yeah, there's got to be some connection to the ordinance. I mean, if you're just putting words out there with no connectivity to come before the town, it's worse.
Well, if you did the last
Yeah, that
item,
thing,
you
that
would just,
suggestion
it
right
would
there.
eliminate all of it, and you would
Yeah.
only have the special use permit for the 5 hives. So we
Right.
wouldn't do any of it except that little S in the table of uses.
Right. Okay. All right, and we can come back if we have questions
Sure.
later, because I'll open the floor now for those of you who are here and want to speak on the recommendations that have been made by our staff. The floor is yours, and as last we were together, just identify yourself and where you live, and we'll be happy to hear from you.
Hi, Buzz Griffin, I live 205 Mulberry Hill Lane. As Elizabeth said, most of the stuff is we're fine with it. A few words here and there we change. I guess I wasn't planning to speak, but I can answer any questions that you may have. The thing of the $50 fee, it's a significant thing to start beekeeping with 2 hives. You're looking around $600 of an investment, and that's an expensive hobby. Adding another $50, we could say that's nothing to that, but it starts mounting up, and it can be done cheaper, but it is significant. I would suggest maybe if you want the certification, possibly waive the fee if a person is certified within the first year, or refund the fee if a person is becomes a certified beekeeper in the first year, within a year. That would satisfy the question, and you could also require a person to be under the supervision of a certified beekeeper as a mentor during that first year if you really want to keep that certification in there. That's the only comments I would have. But the $50 fee is something that's significant to a hobbyist beekeeper. You relate it to other hobbies people have. Is there a fee for that? And I'd be willing to answer any questions you have.
How many certified, Mr. Griffin, how many certified beekeepers do we have?
In the county,
Yes, sir.
in our group, I'd say probably 15. A lot of beekeepers are not certified, and the certified beekeeper is the lowest level. There's a journeyman and also a master beekeeper after that. And I would guess 15. We've got a small club. We've got 35 people or so, and it may be a little bit more than 15.
Well, since this is a municipal issue, how many live in the town? Municipal ordinance,
I
right?
can,
Rough.
I think there's 3 or 4, and I think all of them are either in process of getting a certification or have. But
Okay.
that's a ballpark estimate.
I think our main concern is just with that is making sure that we know who is keeping the bees and where they're at and this type of thing. I think that's our main issue, is
Yeah.
knowing where they're at and who got.
That's a reasonable concern. The $50 fee, I would be concerned that it would discourage people from doing it, from registering, and then, you know, the problems involved which go with that. We
Like you said, they're gonna invest $600 in a couple of hives, which the $50 isn't that much more.
That's 10% more almost.
I'm with you.
I understand, but it is, and we've done a little more research. There's a gentleman with the NCSBA that's collecting information on all the towns in North Carolina, and to date, we've still only found two towns that charge a fee. And Cary charges.
They can use the new straw ones and they're much cheaper. So,
Well, not if they want honey. I mean, those are neat, they look neat, but
my friend sent me a huge thing of honey. He's got so much honey he's got a beekeeper on site.
does
Nothing but-
you pull them out of
Yeah,
those?
yeah.
Well, okay, I mean, you can do
so,
it.
you know,
You can do it, it's just, I talked to the bee inspector about that in our area. Believe it or not, there's a state bee inspector. And he said, yeah, it's like we were talking about earlier, it's not against the law. It's just difficult to do, and it's not a good practice if somebody wants to get honey. And it's also not, it's a little hard on the bees. So. But any other questions?
You mentioned the training, and some of the beekeepers is not certified.
Right.
Now, how would the beekeepers know that when you get some aggressive bees in the hive?
You know it right away.
Yeah,
I mean,
but
yeah, and
keep them from spreading to somebody's house. And that's why
they,
I asked the question, how far was they from?
well, the bees can go up to 5 miles from the hive. Generally, aggressive bees can be caused by several things. One of them, you lose a queen. If they've got a lot of honey to protect, they'll get kind of fussy. But it's still, if you're 10 feet away from them, they don't bother you. I've gone out to my hives recently. I've got a scale on them that I have to go in and download stuff in the phone, and I walk up to them just like I'm dressed right now. If a beekeeper gets a hive that's ill-tempered, there's things that can be done, and the person that I guarantee that's going to want to do that is the beekeeper, because 99 and 99/100 of the people that get stung by bees are beekeepers. And it can be done, but I mean, it will be done. Beekeepers can't stand to have an ill-tempered hive, and they will fix it. As far as training in the certification, the NCSBA certification, that's one of the things that's talked about. And we encourage people, every year there's beekeeping schools in January and February in this area, and we try to get people to go to those, and that's about 10 hours of training, and they come out with quite a bit of information to get started with it. But you know, it's a long process. It's a steep learning curve. But concern about being stung it's usually somebody close to the hive, or if you're barefoot and you step on a bee that's on a flower, if you grab a bee that's on a flower, they're going to sting you. But they don't bother you away from the hive.
But I was thinking about if I had beehives here, and there was a house next to me that had children, and they went out and seen 4 or 5 bees in a bush and started messing with them, they'd be in trouble.
If they started messing with them, yeah, but the bees are there anyway. There's feral hives all over town, in eaves and trees and hollow trees. I mean, the bees are here, and a 15-foot setback is going to solve almost all the problems, because the bees leave and they climb, and in about 15 feet they get above your head height, and they're going through the flowers. You know, they're talking about a beeline. They know where they're going, and they go in a straight line to the flower, and they come a straight line coming back. I could talk about it. That's fascinating how they know how to do that, but they don't fly at this height. They fly higher, and we tell people, point your hives away from your neighbors and give them the most room they can to get away. Kids are kids, and if they want to grab a bee, they're probably going to they may get stung. Yellow jackets get the blame for most bee stings, and bee stings, they die, and they'll sting to protect, but they don't like to sting because they're going to die. A yellow jacket can sting you over and over, and they can bite you too. Does that answer your question? Any other questions? Okay, we really
Thanks,
appreciate
sir.
you guys working with us on this, and I hope we can come to something that makes everybody happy.
We thank you for your information as well.
I'm Ellen Kolodny at 301 Court Street, and I have a question. I noticed that the requirement for the fence said an opaque fence, and I didn't understand what the rationale was for that.
Rather than like a chain link fence,
Or a picket fence,
a picket fence would be considered opaque.
even if it had slats that were spread apart, or
Well, typically they're not going to be more than a few inches apart.
or a wrought iron fence.
Well,
Any-
no, wrought iron fence would not be considered opaque
So what's,
unless they were close together. It's a screen, so it's a visual screen,
and what's the rationale for that?
so that they're not visible to people on the right of way.
And why would that be a concern?
I suppose just so that it's not, it's like a substructure or an ancillary structure that we don't allow those in the front yard in Edenton, and they're supposed to be behind the property and screened. Maybe also a deterrent from having other people go and try to touch the hives or bother them. Wouldn't want that to happen.
Right, I don't, hopefully they wouldn't, they wouldn't do that. I have them on a raised deck, and so I don't have an opaque screen, and I wouldn't get permission, I would think, from the town to do that.
Not under this ordinance, and yours is also in the side yard, so that would be two things to consider. Your hives are in your side yard, and they are not screened.
Right.
now.
So is this going to prevent me from having my hives?
But it depends on what language is passed. But
Okay.
we would certainly want to try and work with you and help you find a spot that would.
There is
comply
no
with the
other spot
ordinance.
that would be appropriate for beekeeping. So if I didn't have them in the side yard, this ordinance, if that's true, would prohibit me from keeping bees, which would be in opposition to what the state regulation is.
We are allowing for them in town under these parameters.
Right.
And if your property didn't meet the parameters,
a sense, the regulation or the ordinance would prevent me from keeping bees
In that location.
which is the only location that I have. So it would be preventing me from keeping bees. And if there was an imperative, I could see, like if there was a real reason to say it can't be in the side yard, or it has to be, I mean, I can visually screen with vines,
Vegetation.
but by not having it in the side yard, I mean, when you're dealing with bees, you have to work within the confines of what's appropriate beekeeping practice. And that is the appropriate beekeeping practice location. Keeps people out of, completely eliminates contact with the hive. It is the absolute safest location. So I would be very concerned about having an ordinance that would basically prohibit the town from being in compliance with the state regulations.
I don't
Well,
think
and
it
Elizabeth,
would be
we-
non-compliant.
Well, Elizabeth, not all side yards are the same. I mean, I have a huge side yard that's bigger than most people's backyard, and aren't you on the corner?
Yeah,
Which,
yeah.
so she doesn't even have a next door neighbor on that side. I mean, I think it's, I mean,
That struck me with
especially
your
in
property
a,
too.
And like,
town that has weird sort of, lot lines and everything. I mean,
I don't necessarily have, that was one of their suggestions that I think, as long as there's screening,
yeah.
I think a side yard is okay. Just to your point about regulating, if someone cannot meet these stipulations, the general statute just says that towns must allow and gives authority to add regulations to beekeeping. And that's in the earlier part of my staff report. It's not that you must allow everywhere under any condition. You're given authority to add regulations
Right.
on location, and screening being one of those items.
As long as they're reasonable. I mean, you could easily prohibit any beekeeping in town with the ordinance that would
Any
prohibit.
other question back there?
One thing about Ellen's hive, I went by her house 3 times before I saw them. They're up high, which really alleviates any issue of the bees getting in contact with people. Plus, they're up high, you don't see them. I didn't see them until I went by there another time.
And
Your hives are there. I mean, they're existing, so you're not going to be coming in and applying for a permit.
I would when there's a
Only
process.
if you're gonna have new hives, because yours are present currently. So you're an existing non-conforming use.
Okay.
Could we somehow put in there that I mean, I don't want to give you any more jobs, but I mean, side yard is such a, I mean, it's one thing on East King Street where the
You
houses
still
are.
have 15 feet to deal with.
Yeah, that's true, that is,
And
yeah.
they would
Yeah,
still
So,
be required to screen it with
Yeah.
either vegetation, an existing building, or fence.
Right.
So I think aside, honestly, to me, as long as it's not in the front yard,
Yeah.
I think that's okay.
okay.
And I think your purpose there is to keep it from where the hives are not directed towards heavy traffic, foot traffic. And I
Do we
think
get
that's very
into the
reasonable.
semantics of what a side yard is?
No, can we just?
That's defined elsewhere.
Yeah, it's different around town.
Yeah.
So we could get a 15-foot with a screen,
So
but allow a side yard, but a
That's the
15-foot
way it's
setback
written.
and a screen, but
That's the
allow a
way
side
it's-
yard.
that is the way they've had it presented to them tonight. Oops. Yeah.
Okay, so the side yard thing is
It's
off?
taken out.
Taken
yeah.
out.
Bless
See,
your
on
heart.
number 2.
This is why I can't be late, because I missed that. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else from the audience? Thank you all very much. Thank you, staff. Town council, you've heard the staff report, you've heard the continuation of the public comment relative to these changes in our ordinance to accommodate beekeeping under the state statutes. If anyone is prepared, the chair will entertain a motion to accept the revised ordinance as presented.
I'll make that motion, but put in the $50 zoning fee.
It's in there. isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what
Well,
we,
Or is it-
There's a note at the bottom.
You
No.
would say not including that last,
right, okay, not including with the addition of a $50 zoning
No
fee.
matter how many hives.
Well, if it's more than
If it's
5,
more than 5, then it flips into another category.
Right.
But if you got one, you're going to have to pay the $50 fee, so we know where they are.
Yep.
And, well, I guess, I'll wait till you get your second for discussion.
Okay. All right, we have a motion, Councilman Dixon, do we have a second?
Second.
Second, third, and fourth. All right, any further discussion?
Well, and Elizabeth brought up a really good point earlier when she had talked with, I guess, Corey's group about the mosquito
I
spray.
think that's great.
Because if they don't know where they're at and they go spray, you don't have any bees. They're dead. So I think that's a real good point from you, that we find out where they are. And that's the only way. I mean, we can't do everything for free. So getting people to come in, getting their permits, that way they know that the mosquito guy isn't going to be spraying them down.
Right now, do the mosquito people know where the hives are in town?
No, because they're not allowed.
That's right.
But, from this discussion, Public Works is going to reach out to their, to the extension agent. We'll talk to the bee regulator that the state has. And then also we'll talk to the vendor that helps us with supplies for mosquito control. Because we want to find out what the best practices are. But I did want to just add, in terms of the fee, I was looking through the ordinance. I don't think you have the authority to charge a different fee for a zoning permit. This is a zoning permit. And I didn't see anything in the ordinance that would allow you to charge a different fee for a different land use, so.
So you're saying the fee is
I think
inappropriate?
no, I'm saying that if the beekeepers are saying, well, don't charge a fee. Well, you have to charge a fee if you're gonna be issuing, Elizabeth's gonna be issuing a zoning
Yeah,
permit.
we got to
And
pay
then
for somebody's labor.
And you don't have the authority to charge a different fee. You can't waive the fee, and you don't have the authority to say, well, we'll only charge,
Oh, yeah,
$25.
yeah. Okay, I got that, yeah.
But if you're pre-existing, you don't have to, I guess.
I don't know, I think Elizabeth was being kind.
Okay.
Elizabeth was being kind.
Yeah.
That's next on the agenda.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. We're in discussion. Anybody else have anything they'd like to say relative to the motion? Okay, hearing none, all in favor, aye? Any opposed, no? Motion carries. We're now legal. Thank y'all for your input.
Yeah, thank y'all for,
Yeah.
it's been a fun little project.
Now you gotta get them.
I need a beekeeper. I can't look after anything
We've
else.
learned a lot from your input, we really have.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Griffin.
Thank you.
Thank you, Buzz.
Yeah, I'll pay for it. I'm not gonna deal with them.
Back to the agenda, we're at item
Sam.
D, which is the adoption of the 2018-2019 budget ordinance. Anne Marie, would you like to make some comments?
I would, but Mayor, do you want to handle C tonight, the repealing of the,
Oh, sure.
in the town code, our code of ordinances, which is different than our land, the UDO, the regulation is that beehives, keeping of bees is not allowed.
Yeah, when I was reading my, in prep for this, I thought that should be before we just did, as a matter of fact. But anyway, sure. Item C, repeal the chapter relative to keeping bees in our town code of ordinances. Entertain a motion to that effect.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed, no? All right. Now to the adoption of the budget ordinance. We've had the budget discussion. The Finance Committee has met. The public was invited to speak. And now, Anne Marie, if you'll set us up for adoption, we'll try to get it done.
All right, Mayor, in your agenda review memo that was sent out this weekend, we highlighted a number of changes or issues that were address that came up at the Finance Committee meeting, and then throughout the course of the month as we continue to work on the budget. I don't know if you want me to run through those
Yeah.
really quickly. The fire department budget was readjusted to account for higher costs for purchasing 5 sets of replacement turnout gear for our firefighters, $2,500. We added revenue to the general fund to reflect the leasing of additional office space above town hall. That was $17,400.
That's a revenue last year you probably
We
did
did not have.
Did not have.
We
right.
did not have, that's correct. We also increased the utilities expense for at town hall, which included, we under budgeted this fiscal year, so we needed more revenue for town hall, the first floor, but then we also wanted to account for the increased utilities that will be consumed with our new tenants, so we increased that line item. And in the general fund, we had talked about the sales tax projections at the Finance Committee meeting, and Virginia pointed out that I made a mistake in your memo, but fortunately she did not make a mistake in the budget. But we increased that line item. It's $630,000. I put in the memo was $430,000, and increased it to $664,000. And that made us feel good. We went back and looked month to month, and I think I might have panicked. There was one month when the receipts were down, and I guess I thought that was a trend, but it really turned out, since we've been working on the budget, it's not a trend. So I feel like we feel comfortable adding revenue to that line item. We also increased, in anticipation of the quotes that we are soliciting for the sidewalk, the connection between West King Street and West Water Street on Granville Street. We increased that line item from $18,000 to $45,000. We hope to have quotes for you at your committee meeting the end of July.
Does that include sidewalk on Water Street?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
okay.
Yep. Then in the police department budget, we were made aware that the police boat, the 17-foot runabout that we received from military surplus, is in need of a new motor. Chief King would like to have an assessment done of the boat. Is it worth investing $3,500 for a motor? Does it need any other work? And so he's reached out to regulator to see if they'll help take a look at the boat and give us an idea. And I listed some of the things, some of the events where the boat is, I think, an asset to us in terms of water-related festivities and festivals. But then also it has been and can be used by Public Works in terms of removing debris and hazards, logs and what have you along the shoreline. But I would just ask that you include the funds in the budget with the caveat that no funds be expended until we present the assessment report to you the end of July.
Quick question, since this come up. Are you buying a used engine? Or are you buying a 10 horsepower?
We got a quote, and I don't know, Corey, if we know. I don't know.
Okay, all right.
$3,500 for a new motor.
Yeah, you getting a 10 horsepower, you're getting it for $3,500.
We noted previously that we had budgeted to transfer funds from the airport fund back to the general fund, but that's not going to work out the way that the timing worked with the leases from DOT and the work that still has to be done. So maybe in the following year, you'll be able to see that revenue back in the general fund. The substation repairs, the Finance Committee spent some time at the meeting talking with us about that project, and we do have funds in 2 line items that will cover that expense. So we feel good that you feel like you don't need to make an adjustment there. So those were the main things that we've worked on over the last couple of weeks, Mayor. happy to try and answer any questions people have.
How much more office space do you have available?
I think we just have 2 more offices
That's
available.
awesome.
Okay, council members, any questions of what you just heard relative to the tweaking of the budget?
I thank Virginia for all her hard work on this.
Good leadership.
Good leadership, good to hear.
Okay, hearing none, Chair would entertain a motion to adopt.
So, second.
Motion and a second to adopt the FY 18-19 budget as just presented with, changes, additions, or tweaks, as I said a minute ago. Any further questions or comments?
I'm amazed that we could do all this with just a 1.5 cent raise
Yeah.
on the tax.
Yeah.
It is.
I'm amazed, and I'm happy.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no? Very good. And finally, a budget amendment, Anne Marie, with the sanitation department.
Sure, and then we'll go back and you do planning board, Mayor.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I think we are going to consider appointing, filling the vacancy
Okay.
on the planning board.
Oh, wow, I'm skipping tonight, that's 2 times. Bad eye. Appointment to the boards and commissions. We have now completed, as of tonight, all the interviews, for applicants who, applied and came and presented themselves for your questions and comments. So, we are in a position where we could go ahead and make recommendations to those boards and commissions. I don't think there are competing slots in any of the interviews that we had, are there?
No, you
There are
have
2 vacancies in both.
on the
Yeah,
boards.
so the people we interviewed, if you all approve, will fill the vacancies that we have. And, so with that being said, Chair would entertain a motion to approve those people who applied and you interviewed and, welcome them aboard to their chosen boards and commissions.
Mayor, I make a motion, we accept all 4
Sure.
in those
Second.
2 boards.
Okay, we got a motion and a second that we accept, the individuals, the 4 individuals who interviewed for the vacancies on our boards and commissions and have been duly interviewed. Any further comments or questions? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed, no? All right,
You got some good people, Mayor.
really do.
You really do.
Yeah. There's a lot of experience in those 4. Now, item F, the budget amendment with the sanitation department,
Okay.
please, ma'am.
Virginia, with Corey's assistance, prepared a budget amendment. And technically, the amendment is not needed because you'll note you're transferring, or they'll be transferring funds from within the department, but because it was a capital outlay item that had been planned and approved in terms of new dumpsters, we wanted to get your approval to transfer funds from that line item to the maintenance and repair equipment for sanitation. And Corey reminded me that part of the cost was for some requirements that had to be made at our transfer station. That's where we empty the solid waste that's collected into the trailer and haul it to the landfill. And then the other repairs were to one of the sanitation trucks. So that's $6,056 that we ask be approved to move around within the sanitation budget.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Chair would entertain a motion to that effect.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further questions or comments? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed, no? All right. Moving now to our scheduled committee meetings for this evening, we have two, beginning with finance, and that's chaired by Councilman Dixon, please.
I guess Anne Marie has some late breaking news on this one. This is the one you said that it's about the extension of the ground lease for the cell tower at Macedonia Road, and you said you were going to
Yes.
have some information for us.
Sure. We, well, in your packet, you have received a copy of the proposal that the vendor, American Tower, who has been leasing about 3.5 acres of land from the town at the wastewater treatment plant. And they put forth 3 proposals. Mayor actually had a contact in the industry, a person who is in the cell phone tower business, the cell business. So we were able to have a conference call with them last week and got their opinion of what was being proposed. And Mayor, did you want to summarize that, or do you want me to do that, or?
You go ahead.
Okay.
You can spend a little more time with it than I have.
The person who's in the business said a few things that I thought were worthy of, or noteworthy. One, that our current lease, the lease payment is a little bit below the national average, so that he said you should feel good about that. He also said that the 3 proposals that were submitted were competitive, were decent, were reasonable. And then he also asked some questions. He was curious as to why there was only one attachment on that tower. And we think that is because, number one, that was the first tower that was built. That was the first cell tower in Chowan County. And after that, the industry just exploded, and the technology changed where cell towers weren't being built, but the providers were being strongly encouraged, and in many cases through zoning required, to try to get on to existing cell towers or water towers. So when he heard that we had, I think we have 3 providers on our water tower, so he said, well, that makes sense. And he also helped us understand what a perpetual easement means, because that sounds like a really, really long time. But he said it would be based on the language he assumed, and that's industry standards, that the easement would be for as long as the tower was on the property. You know, if the tower were to be removed or to come down, then the easement would cease. But we had Corey to cost out the proposals, and that was included in your package. And then we knew that, you know, when you look at the 3rd proposal, what the value of that is if payments were made over 50 years, how do you relate that to today's dollars? And so I did talk to Chuck Schmealer. Remember, he helped us with the airport lease agreement, and he pointed us to an app, I guess, that calculates present net value. And when he showed me how to calculate it, and that option comes back as being still the best option in terms of dollars. But when you compare it to an outright payment of $200,000, the value of this option over 50 years in today's dollars was $263,000. So it's still the more favorable option. You know, if the town were strapped for cash, you know, you might want to accept the $200,000 payment up front. And they're probably used to making those kind of offers to private landowners, and they have tax issues, estate issues to worry about. Of course, you don't have that issue. So I feel like that 3rd option is the most valuable to the town over the long haul, and probably would be, I think, something that you should consider. The mayor and I talked about, well, what kind of a counteroffer should we give? That 3rd option calls for every 5 years an increase, 5%. And we pointed out that all of our other agreements with cell companies, again, they're not towers, they're attachments, call for a 3% annual increase, and he said that is really kind of steep. He said land leases generally have a lower escalator than attachments or structures. He said you could throw out 3%, maybe they'll counter with 1.5 or 2%.
Is that 10%, proposal number 3, option number 3, is that 10% or 5, you said 5%, is it 10?
It's 10 every
5 years, 10% every 5 years.
10%, yes,
3%
sorry, I'm
every
sorry,
year
yes.
is better, but
Yeah.
might not get,
Might not
1.5 is better.
So, Mayor, did I leave anything out?
Not that I can think of, Anne Marie. It was a very interesting conversation. The guy's made a career of this. He partnered with some people early on in the business, and they sold it. As a matter of fact, I think to American Tower, his business. So now he's back in it in another way. But very friendly, very knowledgeable, and therefore very helpful to us, because it's a new era or a new arena for us to be involved with these renewals in an ever-changing environment like cellular communication is. But anyway, so Sam, move back to you.
So is your, is your recommendation to,
I got something I want
Yeah.
to throw out
Yeah.
after this. I mean, just to make it easy on everybody. There, if you do the 3%, what I've seen out here rebuttal from town, then in year 7 we're over 10,000. Year 6 we're just a tad bit under 10,000. Why don't we go back to them for next and just renew it for 10 years or whatever we need to do, or ever how many years, and just do $10,000 for 10 years. And just make it easy and say, there it is, let's do it.
okay?
I mean, I'm just
good
throwing
with
that out as
Yeah,
a-
I think that
a
sounds
suggestion.
good.
Did you see the difference at the end of 50 years, though?
No, I'm not talking about going 50 years. That's why I said 10 years.
10 years only.
10 years. And it kind of ends up as a break even at 10 years. I mean, I don't know if we got to, can we even put a lease out there for 50 years? Are we allowed to do that?
You would have to have that's a good question. You would have to have a public hearing, you'd have to advertise it and state what the terms are, and then, well, I'm not sure if you have to have a public hearing, but you have to approve, you have to give public notice, and the approval has to be done at a regular meeting. Do you remember when we did the parking lot for the hotel, and then a couple times you've had to do it with long-term ground leases at the airport, so yeah. You can, you just have to advertise it.
Don't most towns that has these laws on different things have about 10 years? They have committed of progress. They plan it for 10 years, what we can do for the next 10 years.
Well, you're right, your vision, the council's vision statement is based on 10 years.
10 years. 'Cause a whole lot of things could happen in 50 years.
What's the useful life
Check
of a
the
cell
want to
tower?
get 50 years myself. We won't have to worry about it.
We asked that question.
I don't want somebody cussing 29 years from now.
Is it 25 years or 30 years?
Well, we're assuming, we talked about that. What is the
Useful life.
useful life of the tower?
I suppose they don't
It's
need the
already-
towers anymore. I mean, that's what that's why I think taking the cash payment might be the,
Way to go.
because the technology could it could be all satellite based, and then they don't want it anymore. I think there's a greater chance of that than there is, that was my thought.
We asked him about the changes in the technology and what he
Yeah.
saw coming down, and
So Sambo, you're looking at option one, proposal one.
I mean, that's,
Yeah.
yeah, the sale.
So
yeah.
what did he say?
He said it's hard to say. He thought that
Yeah, I bet.
it was,
Just
they're
curious.
making a lot of progress with, what would you call those, Mayor, the little pings and, but he still felt like towers were gonna be around for a while.
I mean, but cables, you know, I mean, I just,
But even with wireless, I mean, like you see, you still have, we're in the middle of doing a big broadband connection, and we're having to put up poles and put towers on top of
Yeah.
each one of the poles, and, we've had some people that's been in the business a long time too, that's thinking you're still gonna have something to pin to. I mean, I don't know.
in 50 years,
Yeah, well,
you
yeah,
know, I mean, that's what I'm
what's it
saying,
gonna be
but,
in
yeah.
50? Yeah,
Well,
you know, is the tower still gonna be?
Might be for self-driving cars. I mean, that's what I'm thinking, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, there are 10-year renewables in there.
Yeah.
I mean, if the tower business changes, they don't have to renew. But you're right, you don't accrue those
Yeah.
big dollar benefits until the end of the lease. Meanwhile, it's fairly, like Steve said, it's fairly even all the way through.
and our lease does not expire until 2023, and they've been hounding me to extend the lease.
Tell them we'll get back with them in a couple of years.
Yeah.
I like that option.
I like that.
I mean, personally, I would take the money and run, put it and figure out something great to do with it. You know, just 'cause
So are you, is that number two?
I think I'd take number one.
Number
Yeah,
one?
that would be number one.
I mean, if it were me,
So
I mean, that's, yeah, I think technology is gonna change to the point that they don't need towers. I can't imagine it's not satellite based at some point.
Well, this guy Richard said they're gonna be around for 5 years.
Yeah, well,
So you leave $25,000.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I mean, I'm okay with that one too, you know, one or two. Or we go back and say, give us 225, you know, one lump sum payment.
You just make number one, just make it number two. Make number one, number two.
Just, yeah, the number and number two, yeah, just go back and we get 25,000 more. I mean, you know, I can be persuaded either way. It's not a,
Well, I mean, I think we all, it sounds like we're the ones sitting in the driver's seat, if they're
Yeah.
hounding her. Why make it 225? Yeah, how about 250?
yeah, I can see that, yeah.
That's close to the 263 that the one costed out a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think that's a great idea. Go back and say 250 perpetual easement.
Okay.
It's nice to be in the catbird seat.
It is.
For once.
Don't happen often, does it?
Yeah.
Let's take advantage of it.
Well, we think this is something that's got to come before we,
Um,
Well, in that case, we got
I mean,
5 more years.
do
Are
you
you
want?
ready to bring it forward, or you wanna sit on it for a while? If we can bring it forward, start to negotiate and see what they say, we don't have to do anything.
Yeah, I mean, do you need a motion or just?
No, this is what
Okay.
goes back to council.
Yeah. I guess the finance committee's good with that then. Yeah.
So what are you gonna do? Instruct the staff to go for 250 on the professional?
Yeah.
Okay. All right,
Fun night.
next we'll hear from our administrative committee chaired by Councilman Biggs, please, sir.
Mayor, we only have one item on the agenda tonight, and it's about the hazard mitigation. The house out here, kind of sort of at the end of Granville Street. Those people, bless their hearts, have waited almost 2 years now since that storm came through. Those two storms came through, and Anne Marie is just letting us know that we do have the grant. We just haven't got the funding yet. The check hadn't been delivered, but I do hope we can send this right on to full council so that as soon as the money comes in, give her all the leeway she needs to take care of these people. They have been paying their mortgage for 2 years and not been able to live in the house. And, you know, the money's been out there, and I'll go ahead and say it when nobody else will. The state has really screwed this up totally. And not only in Chowan County, there's several counties, they have just not done a good job. But I mean, I'd like to send this on to full council. No one has objections for us to be able to get this taken care of as quick as possible.
That is a floodway there, right? That is
Oh,
a
yeah.
flood zone.
All right, that will happen. And with that, we have completed our agenda for tonight, so we will stand adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, sir.
Fun meeting.
Thank you.
See you
Yeah.
next time.